There are two books I would mention. One is an ELT book, one isn't. The first one is by Bill Littlewood, and it's called, I can't actually remember whether it was called Second Language Teaching and Learning or Foreign Language Teaching and Learning. I forget, it's quite a long time since I read it, but an excellent book which gives a very clear insight into ideas about learning, how people learn, and how these can be translated into teaching methods. Very simple, very straightforward, but very, very clear and a very useful book. But the book that I would recommend to anyone who's involved in English language teaching, particularly people who are working in ministries or teacher training and so on, is a book that's not anything to do with English language teaching. It's a management textbook, and it's called Loss and Change by a man called Peter Maris. And ELT has been very dominated in recent years by reforms and changes, adopting new ideas, pushing through curriculum reform, textbook reforms, testing reforms and all that sort of thing. But with very little consideration of what's involved in getting people to change their ways of doing things. And it's actually a very difficult process. And this book, Loss and Change, is all about how difficult it is for people to make fundamental changes in the way that they do things. And it's a very, very illuminating book, and I think anybody who's involved in educational reform really ought to read it. Well, again, I'd hedge my bets and say there are two things. The first one, it's not a particular thing, but I think what has had the biggest impact has been ELT textbooks, course books. They are often maligned, particularly by people in academic circles, for reasons I've never quite understood. But in terms of the impact that they have on the daily life of teachers and learners, and the impact they have on making changes within educational systems, then I think the course book is the thing that does it, because it's there in the classroom every single day around the world, people using it, and that if you want to get ideas into the classroom, that's the way you do it. And any theoretical book can never come anywhere near the impact that a course book has. And I'm not saying that just as because I have to write course books, so obviously you might think I have a biased view on that, but I think they really do have a very, very big impact, and they're the ones that's the thing that's really had an impact on ELT. In terms of who, then I would again say it's a class rather than a particular person, and that is teachers, because teachers are the ones who do things in the classroom, and there is again going back to this idea of change and education reform, but there's a basic principle which is that you can change the documents on the shelf as much as you want, but until the teacher goes into the classroom and does something different to what he or she did before, nothing changes. So it's teachers who really have implemented changes and made things happen, and it has to be said very often, for very good reasons, resisted changes. You know, some of the crazier ideas that came out of English language teaching, teachers have shown that actually they don't really work very well, some of them. Many of them do, but some of them don't, and it's through filtering it through the practice of teaching that you find out what works and what doesn't work. Now, I've thought about this question, and I actually can't come up with a reasonable answer to it, except that, I suppose, if I'd known that I would still be doing this 25 years later, then I might have done things differently. I don't know. I think the thing is that the last 20 or 30 years in ELT, the time when I've been involved in it, have been a time of considerable change. But very often we've been sort of making it up as we go along, if you like. It's not as if there was a sort of body of knowledge that was back there in 30 years ago, and if I'd known it, I would have done a better job of what I'm doing. The fact is that the knowledge wasn't there. What's been happening in the last 30 years is that we've been trying this, trying that, see what works, see what doesn't work, and gradually over time you develop an idea of what's good, and so you develop a sort of standard way of doing things. So in my own case, I've sort of been influenced by some ideas. Hopefully I've had some influence myself on developing certain things, and it's sort of grown up with us over those years. So I really can't say what I wish I would have, what I wish I knew 25 years ago or 30 years ago when I started ELT, or ELT writing anyway. I just see it as a process that's been going along, and we've learnt things, we've discarded some things, and hopefully we've come to a point where we've more or less got it working okay.